By nature a savage, but by grace a servant. These are the words of a man who defies limits.
Oh, that's it! Beneil Dariush does it again!
A man who has shown us that through hard work, nothing is impossible. At first glance, you wouldn't think a man this friendly and religious would be a beast in the octagon, but the reality of it is very different. For all you fight fans out there, I am indeed talking about the man himself, Beneil Dariush.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Beneil Dariush.
Get ready as we dive into the extraordinary journey of the gentle Assyrian and his ascent into the upper ranks of the UFC lightweight division. Beneil was born in Iran in 1989 to a family of farmers. He holds his family in high regard, a sentiment rooted in his upbringing in a village of roughly 1,200 people.
When I grew up in Iran, I stayed in a small village called Jutapa, so a really small village. I was a farmer. I would help my uncles with all his farming stuff,
which mostly comprised of his family members. He moved to the US at the age of 9 with his family, hoping to live the American dream. However, his knowledge of English was very poor at the time.
It took me maybe 6 months to learn English, just because I had no choice. You gotta survive, and survival is your best teacher.
Which led to him spending a lot of time indoors, in contrast to the lifestyle back in Iran. As a kid, Dariush was a troublemaker, always getting into fights, resulting in him getting the short end of the stick. Hell, he even got kicked out of high school in the 9th grade.
In school, in 8th grade, I almost got kicked out. I did get kicked out 9th grade when I went to high school.
At age 17, Dariush, like every other teen, was set to go to college to study and find out what he wanted to do with his life. He was so anxious about being out of shape once he got into college that he decided to join a gym nearby and practice jiu-jitsu. This was what kickstarted it all. Even though he started the grappling sport purely as a recreational activity and a way to stay fit, it transformed into something else when the competitive juices in him started flowing. Just 3 months in, he entered a competition and won. Over time, Dariush decided that jiu-jitsu would become an essential part of his life. He would plan everything from his school to his work around his training sessions. The mere thought of him going into a match with a better, more experienced opponent and getting the better of them through his mental toughness alone excited Beneil the most. 5 years later, Dariush had earned himself a black belt and compiled an impressive record of 6-1 in all the tournaments he competed in.
Point there that we
I didn't see that. All right. Sorry, chat room. Yeah.
While you see him smashing through his opponents in the UFC, MMA started out a bit bitter for Beneil. When first approached by his coach for an MMA fight, the Iranian fighter only accepted it as a joke, thinking either that he's gonna get beat up or that it would just be a waste of time. But to everyone's surprise, Dariush actually won this fight by unanimous decision. Soon, trouble followed, this time in the face of worsening financial conditions for him and his family. Beneil's mother had asked him to help around the household if they were to survive living in America. This shook Dariush. He was a spoiled kid. Everything he had worked for, be it jiu-jitsu, was for himself. He was not ready for this. Beneil started thinking about abandoning his jiu-jitsu career and looking for a 9-to-5 job. Whereas in a last desperate attempt, he called out to God for help.
If you're real, if you're up there, let me know. Tell me, like, show me something. I need help now.
Next thing he knew, a week later, his coach called him, telling him about a fight in Brazil with a big payout. This was a turning point in the life of Dariush. It was as if a storm had calmed down. He trained like never before. It was a do-or-die situation for him, and sure enough, he proved that he was made for this. Beneil TKO'd his opponent in the first round. Dariush thought he'd done his job with this big payday. He would be able to support his family after all, but financial problems still lingered. Beneil saw that every time he prayed, he would be given an opportunity. This would either be in the form of a fight offer or as an MMA instructor, which would allow him to continue supporting his family. Soon enough, he became a devout Christian, while focusing on MMA full-time, which would later lead him to sign with the UFC.
So that happened, and then my MMA coach calls me. He's like, do you want to teach some classes at our gym? So the Lord opened up another door for me.
Beneil Dariush made his octagon debut in January 2014 at UFC Fight Night 35 against seasoned Charlie Brenneman, securing a victory via submission in the first round.
In big trouble here. He's fighting and he has his left arm trapped. Beneil Dariush.
In his second bout, he was slated to face Ramsey Nijem, a fight he was the favorite in. However, Dariush found himself on the receiving end of a TKO in the last minute of the very first round. This experience shattered him, challenging his belief that he would emerge victorious in every fight. It wasn't until he turned to his faith once again that Dariush realized he needed to compete for the love and passion he held for MMA, rather than being driven solely by greed to win at all costs. Beneil's first pay-per-view fight is arguably one of the best lightweight fights of all time. He faced Carlos Diego Ferreira, a fighter who was undefeated. Carlos was riding an 11-fight win streak, making him an absolute force to be reckoned with.
To get back up. Wow, well, we expected a back and forth.
After an intense 3-round war, Dariush's hand was raised. This fight was what catapulted Beneil Dariush's status in the UFC. After a 5-fight win streak, Beneil was matched up against Michael Chiesa. He started off strong, throwing multiple strikes at Michael in an attempt to shake him up, but nothing seemed to connect. Chiesa was able to take Beneil down in the second round, which led to the fight-ending submission by rear naked choke.
This is tight. He's going across the face, but he's locking on. Dariush is tapping.
Coming off a disappointing defeat, Beneil tried to regain his momentum through his next fight with James Vick at UFC 199. He would show a completely different version of himself, throwing heavy punches right from the start. Vick struggled to keep up before getting KO'd 4 minutes in.
The middle. Vick's out on his feet, Mike. Yeah. And again, Beneil Dariush.
Dariush's new approach was loved by the fans and showed that he was hungry. But unfortunately, this more aggressive, fan-friendly style only got him mixed results, going 1-2 in his following 3 fights, before he was able to put everything together and go on an even more dominant run. From November 2019 to October 2022, Beneil Dariush went on a tear. He accumulated an 8-fight winning streak, beating the likes of Tony Ferguson and Diego Ferreira in a rematch. He mixed up his ever-improving striking game with his elite grappling skills, displaying the looks of a fighter deserving to be ranked in the top 10. Just look at his fight against Scott Holtzman in 2020. After dominating him for the majority of the first round, Beneil KOs him with a near-perfect spinning back fist.
Beneil just... Oh, that's it! Man!
Now ain't that a sight? But wait, I'm not finished. The Iranian-born fighter also showed an impressive chin. There's nothing that makes a fighter's blood boil more than seeing their opponent take all their best shots and continue standing in their face. We saw this happen with Beneil in his bout with Drakkar Klose at UFC 248. After trying to take Drakkar down for the majority of the first round, Dariush decided to settle it by trying to knock him out in the second round. Drakkar landed some vicious jabs and hooks on Beneil, which shook him up quite a bit. Just when you thought he was going to fall to the canvas any second, Dariush quickly turned things around and charged back with a savage aggression, hunting down Drakkar, throwing hands with reckless abandonment, securing the win and 2020 comeback of the year.
Oh my goodness, Drakkar Klose is trying to close the show.
Could climactically happen here.
Beneil hurt him. Crazy.
The crowd went crazy. If this doesn't get you going, then I don't know what will.
Referee Jason Herzog has called a stop to this contest by knockout, Beneil Dariush.
What's more is that Beneil isn't scared to fight anyone, welcoming a fight with Islam Makhachev, while most fighters ducked him. Unfortunately, that fight never happened due to Dariush's injury, and instead, he would get matched up against Charles Oliveira at UFC 289, with the winner getting a shot at the title. That night, we witnessed yet another setback and an end to Beneil's win streak, as Charles completely decimated him by TKO in the first round.
Dariush covering up.
Oh, he's
Maybe
hurt
not
bad.
intelligently
It's over.
defending.
It's over.
Charles Oliveira.
This fight dealt a devastating blow, as his long and excruciating chase after the UFC title had been put to a halt. Everything said and done, Dariush still hopes he can make another run, as it may only be 1 or 2 more fights before he's back in title contention again. This is why his upcoming fight against Arman Tsarukyan matters so much. Beneil needs to have a great performance to prove that he's still got it. If Tsarukyan decides to rely on his speed, it's going to be a little difficult for Beneil, but remember, Dariush does have a lot of power behind those hands. We can only wish that his decade-old experience comes into play, because let's be serious. After all these years, wouldn't you like to see him finally get that elusive title shot? And that's all from us. We'll catch you on December 2nd to see if Beneil Dariush can pass this next test and become more than a perennial contender.